Let us now move on to another intriguing panel discussion on the topic Building and Scaling a Sustainable Startup. We are honored to have with us an esteemed panel of industry leaders, Krishnan Nair, co-founder of Great Learning, a learning global edtech company focused on upskilling professionals. Under his leadership, Great Learning has empowered thousands of learners with industry-relevant programs in collaboration with top universities. Mayank Kumar, co-founder of upGrad and BorderPlus. As a driving force behind upGrad, he has played a pivotal role in shaping the online higher education landscape, making quality learning accessible to professionals worldwide. His latest venture, BorderPlus, focuses on simplifying global mobility for individuals and businesses. We have Mr. Chaitanya Kalipatnapu, co-founder of Emeritus, a global leader in professional education. He has been instrumental in scaling Emeritus partnership with top universities, helping professionals worldwide acquire cutting-edge skills for career advancement. Moderating this session is Mr. Ravi Garikipati, co-founder of Davinta Finserv and former CTO of Flipkart. He is also board member at NIIT Access Mutual Fund and 5paisa, and an active investor in multiple edtech startups. With his vast experience in technology, fintech, and entrepreneurship, he brings valuable insights to this discussion. This promises to be a thought-provoking session, and we encourage the audience to participate by typing their questions in the chat box. Our panelists will address them at the end of the discussion. With that, I would hand it over to Mr. Ravi Garipati for further deliberations.
Thank you, Neha. A much appreciated ice-breaking introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. It's truly a pleasure to welcome you all to today's exciting panel discussion. Building and scaling a sustainable startup. We often talk about building and scaling a startup. Operative keyword here is sustainable startup. Honored to be here moderating this conversation with all of you. Incredible group of entrepreneurs been through this journey for a good length of time. We all know that launching a startup by itself is a challenge. Now, scaling it while being sustainable, it's a different ball game altogether. And today's businesses are more and more expected to be not only profitable but also responsible, ethical, bring a semblance of integrity and honesty in how they do it. And they're glowing examples of companies who've been able to do that. And they're also companies who sort of fast track their growth and scale in slightly different ways and fraught with challenges much later. Many startups begin with this great idea for building a startup with the vision and values that which need to be sustained. Over the course of time, for a multitude of reasons, we tend to sort of miss out on few core values, and while securing for funding or finding the right market fit, having the right team, adapting to rapidly evolving marketing changes or business changes. Oftentimes the focus is elsewhere, and don't spend the kind of time that you're required to spend on what it takes to build a sustainable startup. I think you will see me emphasizing a little bit on the sustainability quite a bit during this panel discussion, while even the previous one spoke a little bit about what it takes to scale a company, scale a startup, the previous panel discussion. That said, there are companies that, they've done incredibly well in the past as well. I come from Valley, and I've seen from close quarters, consumer tech companies back in 2000, built, scalable, businesses while maintaining the sustainability. You're talking about Google, Meta, enterprises such as Microsoft have seen many seasons over many decades and able to sustain while scaling their businesses across many facets. And in Indian context, I've been part of a Flipkart journey myself. A few other consumer tech companies, the last is the distance, and there's some lessons to be gleaned as well. I don't have to name all of them. Particularly our focus is going to be scaling while maintaining sustainability in the edtech world. That's where I think, three of you are on this panel stand out. You've done incredible job in sort of going through that journey, while many attempting to mimic and better, but you guys continue to be beachheads. So with that, I want to sort of focus on a few key themes, and feel free to sort of uh, bring in anything that you think is relevant for this discussion, that you think will be a great help for the audience, particularly the young entrepreneurs looking to build scalable businesses with this sustainability as their focus. The theme that I am largely going to focus is the funding and hiring the right talent and technology impact on scaling the businesses, and then of course GTM, particularly customer acquisition, lifetime value nuances. So I don't necessarily have any set order. I'll probably do a bit of an icebreaker. May seem a bit abstract, but it's important for us to sort of get our head around and talk about this or hear about it through you guys, particularly the sustainability. What are the foundational elements that one should really focus on when you talk of sustainability? Scaling is generally something that every startup looks at, and there is some playbooks out there, but very few playbooks that I see that are proven that will help you build scalable businesses with sustainability intact. So maybe all three of you have gone through the journey and build businesses. So I'm not going to pick anyone. It's if you unless you put your hand up, I'll just go alphabetically. Chaitanya, I'll start with you, and just take us through what you reckon are some of the key virtues or aspects that we need to bear in mind when you look at building a sustainable startup. Uh, what comes naturally to your mind? You've done that for a good length of time, and you've been through a few iterations as well. So maybe give your take on, what are the foundational elements?
Yeah, thanks, Ravi, and pleasure to be in this panel along with Mayank and Hari, and thanks NIIT for the invitation. Ravi, just maybe diving right in. I just want to define like a sustainable startup as something that's that is showing profitable growth, right? To start with, right? That is profitable and at the same time growing, and which is which in my view is thinking long term and at the same time being consistent, be it with financial results or the impact, especially in the case of tech. Maybe I'll just touch upon one or two points. I'm sure Hari and Mayank would add in. Maybe the one part is on the mission part that I just want to stress upon in terms of foundational block. The second one, of course, is having the apt or the right business model to start with. When I just look at Emeritus, so we started in 2010, and again, this came up from a deep pain point both me and my co-founder experienced in terms of access to high quality education, in terms of how could we cascade it to more people, or rather flip the model. Instead of students packing their bags going to a great university, can we flip the model to take the university to where the student is? So it stemmed from our deep desire, which became our mission statement in terms of providing this high quality education and making it accessible and affordable. The reason I say that is a foundational element is that when we started, we are like 4 of our team members. The kind of language or the values, the behaviors we exhibited, we wanted that to be the same way to right now 2,385 team members across 17 countries after 14 years. So in that sense, that mission or having that common set of values becomes a building block as we try to scale, profitably. And also it becomes a North Star in terms of, can we address a large enough TAM at the same time, create an impact. And more importantly, in terms of defining our strategy to say what we do and what we don't do. So all in all, that having that common language of the mission, thereby espousing the values that we want to exhibit, becomes a very important foundational block as we look at a journey over a long term. I'll just pause. Maybe I'm sure Hari and Mayank would add in with other elements.
No, well said, Chaitanya. So, before I take stab at paraphrasing or summarizing, would like to hear your thoughts, Hari and Mayank, as you navigated through this journey.
So, first of all, thank you. Thanks, Ravi. Thanks, NIIT, for this opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here with Chaitanya and Mayank and everybody else who's listening. The interesting thing about this panel, if I may just digress, is that you have three different entrepreneurs who built three different companies solving the same mission, which is access to high quality education. And I think through the course of this conversation, I'm hoping what the audience we get to hear are three very different perspectives, because there's no one right way of doing something. Right. The fact is that all three companies are successful and they've stood the test of time. Right. So I think that's just a fantastic perspective to get. To the question you asked, Ravi, in terms of sustainable startup, right? To my mind, in addition to what Chaitanya said is extremely important, which is defining the mission and aligning everybody to it from day one. Two things that I would think have been extremely important in our journey, especially. First is keeping, a very close eye on the guardrails and maintaining that discipline right from day one. Right. So whether that is on the financial side, whether that is on the culture side, whatever it be, I think it's extremely important that the founding team defines the guardrails in which you want the business to operate, and makes it a point that those guardrails don't get breached, for any reason whatsoever. I say that because especially in times of frenzied scale up, we often hear that discipline can follow, but discipline never follows, right? Discipline has to be instilled first, right? It's very late to, become a large company and then kind of, figure out guardrails. So I think that is one point. The other point, especially in the early years of a venture, I believe it's extremely important that you define what is the problem you're trying to solve and stick to it, because there will be many opportunities / distractions that will come your way. You may want to do, X, Y, Z, but I think it's extremely important that you prioritize and you say, okay, X is the problem that we want to solve, and then go deep into it, solve that problem, get to a scale before you start tackling any other problems. Often, what I see young entrepreneurs do is try to solve too many problems at the same time just because they believe that every problem, presents a vast opportunity. And I think that is that more often than not is a recipe for failure.
Yeah, well said. Absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Mayank, you want to add anything?
Yeah. So I have just very simple thing in education, Ravi. And first of all, thank you for having me today. And I think it's always good to, it's always tough to follow it after Chaitanya and Hari have spoken, because then you're not left with anything to speak and talk about. But I think just one point I wanted to just touch upon here, because you used the word sustainable, and I think profitable, sustainable, scalable is sort of an important aspect of the question that you asked. I feel that specifically in the education context, I agree with what Chaitanya and Hari said, but just to define it and narrow it down slightly more, I think the word outcomes matter a lot on different kind of outcomes. Some people seek outcomes in terms of better job, better salary. Some people seek outcome in better credential, better validation, so on and so forth. So as long as an education entity or education company can focus on providing outcomes, I think sustainability happens via that. And what I mean by this, Ravi, is that if, let's say, outcomes are good, then you start getting the marketing cost starts getting lower and lower, because in education, one of the Achilles heel has been the customer acquisition cost. And if you have great outcomes, your teaching cost may go up, but your maybe acquisition cost will come down over a period of time. So for one of the things that I've realized that businesses and companies traditionally over a long period of time and focus on outcomes. And I think both Emeritus and Great Learning have done so for a fairly long period of time. And that's where the sustainability comes in, because it's always a yin yang, how much you push more for study, education and delivery, and how much you push for acquisition and customer marketing. And if you focus on outcomes, I think both of them find their own balance over a period of time. And this fine balance is one of the toughest nut to crack when it comes to the education space and education sector.
No, very well said. And that's some great points being called out by all three of you. And I think it's important to follow that vision and mission, and that is something that should not change over your course of your entrepreneurial journey. That's a constant. While businesses tend to pivot and they're adaptive to changing business and marketing conditions, your mission and vision very rarely change. And aligning the entire team to that common vision and mission very important. And the entrepreneurs, the founders play a significant role. The common set of values that you define, the guardrails that you prescribe to ensure that we don't go off rail. And of course, Mayank, to your point, and if you focus on outcomes, and your point is that you will invariably strike a right balance between growth and profitability. I think the point well made. Switching gears a little bit, and this is where I think I've seen from my own vantage point. I've been part of few startups myself. Some very successful, some not so for multitude of reasons. The managing sustainability while growing. I know you briefly spoke about Mayank, and I think it's a pretty nuanced topic. There are many ways. There are folks who actually bootstrap their business, and once they arrive at product market fit, and they identify their beachhead segment, and then they look for scale, and that's when they look for more resources. There's some who actually embark on a pretty good idea that has a broad acknowledgement, recognition that is a broad enough market amongst investment community, and they probably be able to raise capital as well. And post doing that, they run into other set of challenges. Growth versus maintaining the unit economics and profitability, a balance in the burn rate with the revenue growth. And some have managed to do that well, but it's not as easy as we make it out to be. And I would like to reach out to each one of you and have us, basically take us through some of your experiences, what worked, what didn't, and some of the lessons that you guys learned. That'll be great help for the audience. Again, maybe Mayank, you just sort of boarded that discussion, focusing on outcomes. Maybe I would like to hear.
So I think what you asked in the question is very important, Ravi, because in education, many a times when you raise external capital, what ends up happening is that you are asked to chase certain things which may not necessarily, as Chaitanya said, is not long-term aligned with your vision. And I think I find it's very easy for the entrepreneurs to say that, look, yeah, investor ne bola tha, therefore this is what has happened. But that's a big cop out. I also personally feel that at the end of the day, you have raised money, you got a set of investors on your own count. And that's where I feel that as entrepreneurs, we need to be extremely strong and rigid about how we want to build the business. And you need to find the right set of investors coming along with you, people who have slightly long-term visibility, long-term sort of vision alignment, without which you do end up getting into a trap of trying to build the business for the investor rather than building the business for your consumer, customers, or your stakeholders. And that's been one sort of challenge area that I've at least seen in the space. So for me, I think my advice to anybody venturing out in the education space is that you will get a lot more, how do I say, you will get enamored by the PE VC ecosystem to build a business for themselves. But look, you are building the business for yourself, you're building the business for your own customer. And as entrepreneur, you get one chance to get it right. I guess a VC or a private equity entity will get 10 chances, and if one of them gets right, it's good enough for them. So when you are looking for one chance to build right, build it in the right way, build it with the right fundamentals, build it with the right long-term vision alignment, and get the right sort of people who aligns with you rather than later forcing you to build for somebody else rather than building it for yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Hari, you want to add to what Mayank just said?
Yeah. So, Ravi, our journey at Great Learning has been a little different because we have been bootstrapped, right? We never took any external capital by choice. We said that we want to bootstrap and get it to scale. And over the past 12 years that we've been building Great Learning, it's been, it's all been the business, it's all been the money that the business has generated, which we've put back into the business and invested and so on to get to a scale of, 1,000 CR plus that we are currently operating at. So I think in our journey, then of course, like every other startup, there are always choices and discussions on whether we should raise capital, what benefit or advantage would that capital provide, and so on. And for us, we were very clear that we should raise money when we really need that money, rather than raising money just because competition has raised money or everybody in edtech is raising money, right? So we consciously stayed away from that, and I think that is an advice that I would give everybody, that there's no one way to build a scalable venture, right? You can raise capital and still build a very large, sustainable, scalable, successful venture. You can even bootstrap your way to success, right? I think it really depends upon which is the path you want to take, and if you are raising capital, then you have to partner with the right set of investors, like Mayank and Chaitanya mentioned, right? They have to be long-term aligned. And as an entrepreneur, you should be very certain as to why are you raising that money, right? What is the need that it is going to service for you?
Yeah. Hari, before I go to Chaitanya, I just wanted to hear your. I think you made a very telling point, and it's important for the audience, the entrepreneurs, to pay more attention to what you just said. It's conventional wisdom says, don't have to go raise money when you really don't need it, and there should be a real reason why you need to raise. For me, having been at various startup gigs myself, the very basic prerequisite is you need to have a product market fit, and you need to have a good idea about your unit economics. And until then, there's no point raising money, however big the opportunity is and the space that you're in. Most entrepreneurs are passionate. They have a good handle on the problem statement. They'll be able to convince the VCs. VCs also go through FOMO, and they may be are willing to write a check. But once you take money from VCs, not only you get driven, inadvertently, by their agenda in some cases, I wouldn't say in all cases, but you also, on your own, compelled to do few things that right off the bat are not the right things to do, right? Growth at any cost, and because you have resources and so on and so forth. How maybe the what I'm expecting from three of you build scalable businesses, the downside of doing that, and in some cases it's a point of no return, and you won't be able to recover as well. You're going down that downward spiral. While the opportunity is big enough, large enough, you're doing the right things, it's not going to opportunity is not going to vanish in thin air. I mean, there are many red ocean opportunities, people still making great businesses, right? But yet what I just said sounds logical. What you said, Hari, sounds logical, but yet many don't seem to embark on that path. Why is that, and what is that the new gen entrepreneurs should be taking away from your experiences, our experiences? Maybe a little bit more emphasis, because there's too much capital being raised, and too soon, and that's leading down wrong path.
Yeah. So, my view on this, Ravi, is that what I often see with young entrepreneurs or young ventures is that they believe that money will solve problems, right? That external capital will solve fundamental problems for them, fundamental problems like product market fit, right? Which has never happened, right? So I think the onus of solving for that product market fit is for the entrepreneur and that initial team that is building the product. Nobody else can come and solve it for you, right? So believing that raising a ton of capital will suddenly make that path easier is, I think, is just a false hope, right? It never works like that, right? Once you have solved for product market fit, to scale up, of course, raising capital is one way to scale your business, or if your business is profitable and you have cash from the business, redeploying that is also another way, right? And both paths are fine. But raising too much money too soon is definitely a handicap, right? Just from my personal experience. So around 2018, 19, which is about 6, 7 years since we started Great Learning, when we had achieved a certain amount of scale and we were starting to get known, there was a lot of inbound interest that we received from the investor community. And in all those conversations, the point that was told to us was that, okay, what you guys have built is good, right? But let's make it even better. Why don't you enter K-12, right? That is a big opportunity, right? And all of us remember 2018, 19, 20, and the surge that was happening in K-12, right? So then the wisdom in the investment community was that enter K-12, right? That is the way to go, right? That is where the big opportunities. And now we are in 2023, 24, 25, where we've seen that K-12 opportunity is completely vanished, and suddenly upskilling is, upskilling and higher education and professional education is where the big opportunity is in edtech, right? So I think it is more important that entrepreneurs have that conviction that, okay, this is the opportunity, this is the problem that I want to solve, rather than being swayed by what people will pay money for, because that's not going to solve your problem.
Yeah, makes total sense. And Chaitanya, unless you want to add something more, there's another important topic I want you to sort of take a view. One, it's more to do with the go-to-market and customer acquisition strategy, right? Assuming that see, when you build something at the beginning, right, there is this belief that what you're building, the problems that you're addressing may apply to many segments of customers, right? And often, and you realize much later, if you're really attentive to the customer feedback, the resilience of your solve is greater in some segment and not so much, right? And it reflects in retention and many other metrics, right? That you can look at. They're proxies to glean that insight. So, what is that you've done in your journey as you're building? There it is, figuring out your ICP, the ideal customer profile, and is any signs there that you've sort of figured out that you can share with the audience here? And then relating to that, once you have the ICP, how do you find ways to acquire that customer? How do you optimize CAC over time? And also, potentially, get better LTV from the customer. So it's largely around the go-to-market, ICP, and acquisition nuances is what I want to understand from you.
Yeah. Sure. I think this ties back to the funding part as well. As you're talking about, once you have the product market fit, I think the best form of funding is what you can get from a customer rather than from an investor, right? I fundamentally believe in that. And in that sense, your fundraise should not be the goal, but to what Mayank said, the impact or what you're living up to your mission has to be the goal. So when it comes to the product market fit, look, as much as we talk about the product market fit, I would also think, especially in education sector, is also important to have the founder venture fit in terms of why is it that you can make a difference in terms of the sector. And for us at Emeritus, it came in a little naturally because I was working at INSEAD Business School in their executive education for 4 years, have seen, had a ringside view in terms of the kind of impact that professional education could make. So in some sense, it grew organically, or we had an understanding that, okay, this is the potential target market that's out there, or this could be the bells and whistles or the features of a product or a program that we could launch in the market. So that's how we started. So the hypothesis when we had, again, is more about putting something in the market, bootstrapping, and see whether it could have the traction with respect to the CAC, with respect to the willingness to pay, etc. And if it doesn't work, fail fast. So I think that's the approach that we went with. And because of some of this background of the experience, we had a hypothesis that in professional education, working with a top tier brand, we can put together a program which in the process can deliver an outcome or an impact to what Mayank spoke about. And so that's how we went in. And once we had traction where we had a sense that, okay, CAC is under what we have had an hypothesis, then I think we took the aspect about scaling. similar product. So broadly, when we launched or when we entered either the start of the company or a new product line, etc., this has been an approach that we have followed. And as I say this, it's not that not all the time we are successful, but the important part is that to be laser focused on what you're solving, not just to spray and pray. And the second thing is also when to pull the plug when things are not working. So I think these are important elements along the journey. Maybe I'll pause there. I could dive deeper if needed.
No, great point. And I just want to, extend your thought process on one point. Pull the plug when it is required, and that's something that oftentimes entrepreneurs find it hard to do it. And the common fallacy that we all gone into, or seen it happening at some point or the other, is it's okay to acquire a customer as long as you're solving the problem, no matter what the cost of acquisition is. And with this perceived a notion that we can increase the lifetime value in future, and it'll all play out okay. CAC to LTV, that's a metric that we often call out, and we draw a lot of comfort on the Excel spreadsheet, putting some number out there and say, hey, sometime in future we'll hit that and everything is hunky dory. So, but you also mentioned, one, not to be ruthless and very on, bring that intellectual honesty, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and pull the plug, right? So, is any, again, any when do you make the call? When do you know, this we have this misplaced understanding of product market fit. When you're struggling to acquire a customer, you have to burn a lot of resource to acquire a customer, and you're lulling yourself into believing that in a future the way to monetize the customer in a better ways. That, how do you actually, since you said you should be willing to pull the plug if it doesn't, when do you make that call? And which means you need to get your unit economics going right from the day one, right off the bat, or this is the time that I give myself to optimize and get to that unit economics positive scenario, and at which point I have this comfort to scale. What's your take?
Look, for us, the important part here is that have some guardrails on the cost of acquisition, and not to have this utopia that, okay, the customer, a learner comes now and he or she will provide the LTV that even if your cost of acquisition is more than your ARPU, etc., it will work out. So I think that could be quite utopian in our view. But in the context of the sectors that we operate in or the programs that we have a runway of at least maybe 2 or 3 runs of the cohort for that CAC to stabilize, etc., to make this sustainable in your words, right? And if that is not happening, because right now we have 14 years of data backing to say that given a particular program in a particular theme with a particular school, what's the runway that it would have for it to make it profitable or make it sustainable. So I think right now we have the comfort of the data, Ravi, but maybe 5 years ago, at the same time, the idea is to be very, very disciplined. I think Hari spoke about that, to say that not to have this. It's quite easy to be wedded to the idea to have this version of a Stockholm syndrome, to say that, okay, it will eventually work. But I think to have the discipline to say that, okay, if the guardrail of the CAC, let's say, more than 80% of the, if it goes more than 80% in the first 2 runs, depending on the product, I'm just giving an example. So we will not do this, or we will not be in this segment, is one approach that we do, and to be very brutal about it. Otherwise, yeah, it will just be a leaky bucket, and by the time you realize it, it's in the red.
Totally makes sense. Well said, Chaitanya. So now another elephant in the room, and that is large. I'm now talking about building a strong and resilient team. The importance of the team when you're looking to build scalable businesses and maintaining sustainability. I know founders, play a big role, and defining the vision, mission, and values and guardrails. And when you comes to building the team that you require when you're going through 0 to 1, not necessarily the same. Some, although I'll be very careful not to make a blanket statement here. In some scenarios, you do find the need to sort of refresh your team or upskill your team or bring new talent as you're embarking on scale journey, right? And some entrepreneurs recognize that and they are willing to make those calls dispassionately. Some struggle to make that switch, right? And so they're this saying, what got you here may not get you to where you want to get to, and something ought to change. And oftentimes it involves changing the team as bringing the new talent. I wouldn't call it changing, bringing the new talent that is required to scale your businesses. I would like to sort of, pick your brains and glean your experiences here. Hari, you want to start?
Sure. I think that's a very valid, point, Ravi, and it is in fact, as you scale up for an entrepreneur, that is one of the key problems to solve, right? That how do you equip every problem with the right team, right? And sometimes you will come to the realization that the current team that you have is not fully equipped to solve that problem, right? So the approach that we take or we have taken always is that we always try and give growth to folks who've been with us for a long time and who've actually performed over the years, right? So it's a very like a positive reinforcement and constant reward mechanism, right? New opportunities, new challenges, always first provided to folks that we have identified within the system who we believe are ready to take on let's say the next challenge. Um, Most times for us it has worked, but there have also been times where it has not worked, right? And in those cases, we've just been very honest with the person that listen, what the skills that are needed, right? The magnitude of challenge that needs to be solved. Probably we need external talent to come in and solve that, right? And in those cases, we've gone outside and hired from the market, and tried to make it work, right? So I think it is a balance you have to strike. Um, in my experience, I feel dissatisfaction and disenchantment in the existing workforce happens when they realize on two aspects. One, if the founding team is not being honest and transparent with them. So I think that is a non-negotiable, right? As founders, as leaders, you have to be always honest and transparent with your team, right? That is one part to it, right? So if there is a veiled communication, that does not go down well, right? The other part is that I think disenchantment happens if they realize that they were never given the opportunity to prove themselves, right? So hence what at least I believe is that if you identify people in your team who are good, capable, top performers who are ready to get to the next rung of challenges, then give them that opportunity and be very honest and frank with them, right? If they can solve it, great. If they can't solve it, then the business needs to solve it, which means we will need external talent to come in and step in and solve the problem.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Mayank, my question in the same realm is more about, how you actually continue to inspire and motivate and as a result, retain the, top talent that you need to be able to build a scalable businesses. And oftentimes you realize, these businesses are not built overnight, and you need to have folks who are committed as much as you are to the problem statement and stay the course for good length of time. And what in your experience has worked in terms of being able to retain the top talent? And
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, fair. So Ravi, on that note, so one of the points that Hari mentioned, that it does take, as you go through different journeys, it does change. I think one point I want to touch upon is somebody told me very early, and he was perhaps giving me the a more sort of empirical evidence that from your Series A or whatever seed, Series A round, or Series B till the time you land up with your IPO, your leadership changes on average about 2.5 to 3.5 times. So there's a sort of full shown of the leadership given the different stages that you are coming in. And as much as I think somebody mentioned that you can be extremely passionate about the business, but not emotional. So at certain point of time, you just have to ensure that you are bringing on that change and don't get too stuck up and being emotional about the problem rather than being just passionate about the problem. So I think that's just one thought and advice that I would like to sort of share with everybody, that there is bound to be a change, because I think early days when you get people in, they are more, let's say, expert in their domains and product experts. They understand how to build the initial sort of product. And then to scaling up, the skill sets change significantly. And you need people with understanding of P&L, how to look at numbers in a very sort of unique way, so on and so forth. So I think that bit happens over a period of time. For us, I think at the leadership level, Ravi, for the three things that works out really well, and I think the same thing works lower down the order also. One very critical part of how to retain people is just being over communicative. And I think that's helped us at least to let people know all the news upfront. How is it working in your department with some other departments, and then therefore what's the impact of this at the overall company level? Just being more communicative and being more transparent and being more honest definitely helps in connecting a lot with folks out there. Not just leadership level, but lower down, because I do get the question from sales team coming up and saying, sir, I did this, but how is it helping the larger company? And the more you communicate, the more you inform, the more you speak, it helps people connect to the broader sort of vision and the long-term the company objective. The second one is um, I think sometimes when you become bigger, the teams start getting in silos, and therefore sometimes you don't have a proper picture of what others are doing and what somebody else are doing. And for that, I think in today's context, when the teams are getting more remote or distant and different locations, how do you bring people together such that everybody understands what each one of their impact is at an overall level? That also definitely helps when people to sort of retain and keep them motivated. And I think the last one is obviously you praise in public and you berate in private. It never goes out of fashion. But even at the senior most level, you do need encouragement. You do need encouragement at a more sort of open forum and open places. And that, while it works for right at the front line and mid-level team members also, but even at the top level, senior levels, you do need encouragement, and you do need the focus on why what you're doing has helped the organization. Just bringing out those success stories. Even today, when we go out, we do talk about success stories of, even if it's a small thing as winning a new contract, because you do need that positive reinforcement, aligning it back to the vision, and so on and so forth. And those two, three things definitely helped us in getting people aligned and letting people come along in the common vision.
Great, totally makes sense, Mayank. So in the interest of time, there are a couple of other topics. I was also paying attention to some of the requests from the audience, and I have that as another theme. I think what I see here is what's the most important point to consider while doing capital investment. I think tying to that, let's look at it a bit more holistically for the benefit of audience. Yeah, Hari, you said, you embarked on the journey. I think probably that's the case for Chaitanya and Mayank as well. But you are very explicit that you guys were keen on bootstrapping it, and you sort of went down that path until you attained product market fit, and then you entertained in an investment route. So I want to just get some broader understanding from three of you. How do you actually raise the institutional round? When do you raise, and not how, when do you actually raise the institutional round? And what do how do you balance the investor expectations for the long-term vision that you have? Some of you briefly spoke about the need to sort of manage that, but maybe a bit more nuanced. How do you actually put a concerted effort to ensure that your long-term vision is not compromised when you're raising institutional round? So maybe, yeah, when is the right time, and then how do you strike that balance, and what worked from your experiences, and your interfacing with investors, especially your, struggling in, potentially compromising on the vision, and what worked.
So
Yeah.
maybe I'll just get started on this, and then maybe Chaitanya can come along. So I feel maybe the best investor to raise money is essentially in education, because a slightly negative working capital is the customer. So they are the best investors who can come in and give you the money to run the first few batches without actually burning money, because they put in the money upfront. But in the journey, there are periods of time or the moments in time when you realize that this is the time when we need a slightly more orbital shift, and because education is it is little bit like a box by box business, and therefore you win one course, as Chaitanya was saying, then you win another course, and you win another course, and you win another course, and you sort of scale up with that. And the course will go to a certain level, and then it sort of caps out at that play. I think there are times and moments when you feel that, look, now I have got into a place where I know that every course I launch, I will manage, let's say, that 30-40% CAC or 50% CAC, and I'm able to get to that very quickly. And this is a time where I need to move from, let's say, 100 programs or 5 courses to 50 courses. And that requires a bit of capital investment. So once you know that you have figured out the way of scaling things, then expanding the horizon in terms of more courses, more curriculum, more sort of subject areas becomes one interesting point for people to look at scaling. Another place where we feel people have looked at raising capital, and this has happened in other places also, is that when you're figured out, when you're running, let's say, offline institution, and not just sort of technology-led programs and businesses, you do see that, look, I have now figured out how one center in 6 months or 18 months time gets to profitability, to move from 1 to 20. So I think those are inflection points, is what I would say, that comes your way, either expansion of courses or expansion of distribution, where people look for raising capital and then moving. And that time you just need people who are aligned to your values and mission, rather than money has the same color, but vision does not have the same color. That's where you need alignment meaningfully.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Maybe just to add, Ravi, to that, one for us is, as we touched upon, is to be extremely clear why you need the funding. So in the case of Emeritus, of the first 7 years of our journey, we haven't raised, we bootstrapped, right? So we raised money when we knew that, okay, we have to invest in terms of creating courses, in terms as we are scaling up our online offerings, and that would not be possible with the way that we have accrued profits, as well as plowing back our earnings, etc. So to Mayank's point, as we are trying to get to the next orbit, as we do that, as much as you're talking about raising the money, it's also important to have the choice of what kind of investor you want to get on the cap table. So that's where I think alignment on your vision, or having alignment on that long-term goal, because education, I think I remember Mr. Pawar talking about it. One should have a very long-term view. It's not that education is a business. It's not that you could do, or you could have an exit in the next 1 or 2 quarters, or in a given year. Somebody should not be in this particular sector. So in the same way, I think the investor should have a long-term view. Luckily for us, we have investors who are balance sheet investors, for example, in our cap table, or who do have this impact as at the core of their thesis. Right, so that helps, especially for this particular sector. So to align in terms of how you want to grow and where you want to grow, so that you don't take these myopic decisions, or look at bad growth opportunities, as I would like to call. So I think the aspect about alignment on this long-term vision is one, and then ability to choose the investors. Right, and at the same time, make sure that everybody on the cap table is aligned in terms of how you want to, where you want to take the ship, and they're in full support of it. And fundamentally, ask the fundamental question on why do you need the capital, rather than because that's not the win in itself. It's a means to a greater objective.
No, you guys really hit the point home. The onus is on the founder to really understand why you need and when you need, and the clarity has to be absolutely established without any ambiguity. You don't raise just because somebody is willing to write a check. And second, there's upfront diligence that you need to do to ensure that the kind of investor, the quality, the color of money is aligned to your vision and long-term vision, right? And there are many ways to raise money, and many classes of investors, and you need to pick the right one. Well articulated.
Ravi, if I may just add a small point there.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So I think absolutely agree with everything that Mayank and Chaitanya said. As an entrepreneur, I think it is extremely important to be brave enough to say no. Right, and that is the trap that many entrepreneurs fall into, where they just don't, say no. Right. Whether it is who you're raising money from, or once the investor is on board, what they want you to do, right? So I think if the entrepreneur there has conviction, right, to say that this is not something, I'm not okay with this, right? This is not my vision. This is not what the company is being built for, right? Just that ability to say no, I think, will help entrepreneurs go a long way. It is hard. It is easier said than done. But in the long term, it only earns you more respect, right? And from everybody around you. So I think that is a behavior. If more entrepreneurs can imbibe, I think that'll help them.
Absolutely. And now maybe I have enough time to just cover one other theme. In the interest, given that we are talking about building scalable business while maintaining sustainability, another thing that comes to my mind that's very important is to ensure the business that you embarked on doesn't get commoditized over the length of the time that you've been at. Right, what is relevant and what is differentiated, what is perceived to be unique value may not remain the same for eternity. So how do you sort of constantly keep a watch on ensuring the products and services are not going to be commoditized, and what is that you need to do organizationally speaking, and when you're entering more so when you're entering a crowded market, and well-funded startups, big enough problem statement, big enough TAM, but it's a red ocean. And how do you stay on the treadmill, innovate for the future while ensuring that you're not compromising the current needs, serving the current customers?
Maybe let me take a stab at it. Look, I think in case of education, the aspect is not about commoditization, but it's more about are the outcomes being degraded from cohort to cohort, from year to year? And I think that's the thing to watch out for when it comes to be it a career outcome, learning outcome, etc. that we do. And of course, there are enough and more metrics that we track to ensure that the satisfaction, the NPS, the career outcomes, the learning outcomes, they are maintained, or we find ways to uphold them. So yeah, unlike other sectors, the aspect is might not categorize as commoditization, but degradation of outcomes. And so there are few ways. One is in terms of how do we make the programs, the degrees, diplomas, certificates that you're doing relevant. Because at the end of the day, a company is investing in this is to ensure that the employee back at work is doing much better in terms of productivity or effectiveness. Individual investing in himself or herself is to achieve a better career growth. This is something that has to be the North Star, and we compass in terms of what we track, and to ensure that the courses are relevant, the outcomes are met, and that's what makes ensures that that there is willingness to pay. Your CAC is down, unit economics are healthy.
Great, excellent. Yeah.
If I may just add on, see, I think in this whole business of building, scalable, sustainable education businesses, often as you scale, the focus gets lost on the ed part of edtech, right? Whereas that is the core, right? So the beauty about building a business in education is that you can build a business, but you can also create long-lasting impact, right? And I'm sure that is the reason why all three of us, chose education as the space to build businesses in. So to answer your question, Ravi, I think it's extremely important that you constantly look at the product offering, right? And see whether it is in tune with learner expectations, right? Because expectations also evolve over a period of time, right? And are you being able to deliver, to Chaitanya's point, the outcomes that learners are expecting, right? And the best way and the only way to do that is keep speaking to your learners, keep speaking to customers, right? To understand their experience better, and what is it that you can improve. So it's an iterative process that I don't think ever stops, and that is the way that you evolve, and go from strength to strength.
Maybe just to add one small point, Ravi, to this thing, that I think in education, the product market fit as a concept doesn't work, or there's no word as product market fit, because it's constantly evolving. And there's actually not product market fit, there's a product market channel fit also, because the channel also changes, the customer acquisition channel. I think all three has to align. Just one point to add to what Hari said. I think it's not just the candidate and the learner expectation that is changing. I think equally important in some of the cases of what you do in edtech and education is how the recruiters are changing their thought process. And very simple example, I think data science was big about 5 years back, then became machine learning, then got AI, then Gen AI. And I think a lot of these innovations start happening at the recruiter level first. and then the learner starts sort of picking that up. So I think just being in touch with both the sides of the marketplace, which is one side is people who are recruiting and one side where people are sort of seeking courses, that bit is equally important for half of the one part of the content team at upGrad. Ravi just looks at JDs and job descriptions, and that's how they figure out what to do in the process.
No, brilliant. That was a brilliant point, and I think Chaitanya, you also uh, actually corrected me, if you will, when I said commoditization. I think that's a wrong articulation from my part. It's more about staying relevant and staying, contemporary, and having that keen eye to the emerging needs of the market. There are many ways to do that, and Mayank, you just spoke about one. Gleaning all the job descriptions that are in the works, and then taking that as one of the inputs for you to design courses and curriculums to stay relevant, right? And I think staying relevant is not a one-time job. You have to be on the treadmill, and you have to be cognizant of various other dynamics that are at play. And as long as you keep doing it, I think you're in business. So well said, all of you. One last thing, I don't want to end, being a CTO myself, I don't want to end this panel discussion without touching upon the topic of technology, AI, and how that is helping edtech businesses, both in terms of scaling and also improving the profitability. All right, both top line and bottom line. How you guys embarking on a journey? In the past, it was more about tech enabling your business. Now it's a AI first thinking. Maybe your parting shots on that piece before we wind up.
I'll take a stab at it, Ravi. So for us, we think of, especially there's a lot of talk about will AI be replacing the traditional learning models, etc. So I view it as AI being an enabler rather than in terms of how internet played a role, or even before that, in terms of how calculator played a role in terms of improving the skills. So for us, across the value chain, when you look at the market research or creating the courses, right, or enrollment, marketing, and delivery, we think of AI, how is it adding a layer to make it better at the end for the learner in terms of enriching the learning or improving the outcomes. So that's how we view at it. So in terms of using that to short circuit the market research that's needed, using Gen AI related tools, how can we use that in learning design in terms of creating up-to-date content rather than some recorded videos, etc. And in terms of delivery, how do we use AI as a tutor or an assistant for each learner to personalize, etc. So that's how we are seeing this in the process. Hopefully then for a learner who has been there maybe 4 years ago on a given subject, the outcomes that he or she might have seen versus now with these added tools, we believe that the learning outcomes or the career outcomes will be much, much better. That's how we are looking at this, and we are making investments on that.
Anyone else want to add to what?
Yeah. So from our perspective, similar to what Chaitanya mentioned, if you look at it from the lens of the learner, I think the real benefit that we are able to provide to learners with the help of AI is that we are able to make learning adaptive and personalized, right? And on-demand support, right? So I think for every learner, that is something that matters a lot, because what you're trying to learn is a skill which is hard to acquire, right? So in that journey of you acquiring that skill, obviously there will be uh, points in time where you have questions and you want those to be answered, and you want them to be answered right now. In a non-AI world, this was all done through ticketing and humans and all of that, right? Whereas now, through AI assistants and AI mentors, the help is available on hand, right? So I think that really enhances the whole learner experience. When we look at it from an organization standpoint, I think today almost every function across great learning uses Gen AI to drive higher efficiency, higher productivity. So we are able to do a lot more without linearly having to expand the team or the number of people, and that's a real benefit that we see. And on the market side, on the demand front, of course, the need to learn AI is what is really kind of helping the growth of the business.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think personally, I'm more excited about folks like you doubling down on learners' experiences. And if we can actually bring AI to the party and ensure that you're building a platform that enables personalized experiences at scale, and the learning outcomes can be very different from what we see today. I think
Yes, Ravi, I think there's one small thing I want to add. I think because Hari also mentioned this thing, I think this AI era, and I got this quote and it fits in really well for the AI ecosystem, that people will make more money by being brave than by being brilliant. I think in this era, somebody has to take bold steps of because today a lot of things, it has democratized a lot. I don't think a younger founder also today can actually create a product which is as good or superior than what exists for a very long time. And somebody has to just flip the problem statement and look at it in a very differentiated lateral way altogether.
great. So I think I'm just looking at the time. We ran out of time, and there are many things that we could have covered, but I just chose a few things that I thought more relevant for the audience, especially from three of you having embarked on this journey and scaled the businesses that you've built. It's absolute pleasure to talk to three of you, and we covered many. I may not be able to summarize all, and hopefully this is recorded and it'll be put out there for folks to consume at their leisure. And thank you guys. Really appreciate you taking the time, and do the very best in your respective businesses. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you all for such an engaging discussion.